CA
executives were wondering what the heck it means, and it happened within 5 minutes. Why would
CA
do that? Why? What's going on in
CA. May 24th, 2016, the day that will live in infamy. The day the Warriors of Chaos, after a turd storm of epic proportions, finally went gold. Come a long way in those 6 years, and Chaos waits no longer. The boys in black are back, and their rework will bring Archaon, Sigvald, and Kholek Suneater into the modern era. Starting today and over the next several weeks, you'll be treated to epic battles from across the Warhammer world, as Game 1 and Game 2 races make their triumphant return and pit themselves against the forces of Game 3 for the first time. While all that's going down, old units that maybe weren't so well received initially are getting glammed up and ready for the big show. The time for campaign will soon come, but it is not yet. This is a battles only build, but in the meantime, there's still a tremendous amount to show off. So without further ado, let's jump into the Chaos rework on the battle side and give y'all something to smile about, huh? You may have noticed a couple major changes for Chaos already. The Chaos Knights of Tzeentch and Doom Knights have been visually overhauled from the ground up, sporting new armor, weapons, and iconography. And the Terrors of the Void, the Shetland ponies of the apocalypse, are ponies no longer. They're on that shit that makes your head grow, and they now dwarf every other horse in the game by a country mile, making Chaos Knights look quite a bit more proportional than they used to. As those images at the beginning of the video can attest to, they're more like Chaos Clydesdales now, on the size of monstrous cav, almost doubling the profile of even Empire generals on their warhorses. If you haven't been around since the launch of this trilogy, you may not fully appreciate the journey it's been to finally get here, but those two changes alone should warm the hearts of many a vet. It's something people have been asking for a very long time. And in the case of the Chaos Steeds, pretty much for 6 years, people have been asking for that. And yes, Undivided has a new color scheme now, a much darker, deeper black on their armor than the steel gray we had in Game 1 and Game 2, and overall they just look better. So, to answer that horribly executed Brian Windhorse meme at the beginning of this video, where he poses that all-consuming question, what is going on at CA? Why would they overhaul the visuals of Tzeentch Knights now, of all times? Well, correct me if my math is wrong, but usually 2 + 2 = 4, and when you see unique Coordinate Chaos Warriors and Doom Knights suddenly start looking gorgeous, there may indeed be more planned for the mortal side of each Chaos roster, and this might be the first major step along that road. As one might expect, Chaos Marks are beginning to make their first appearance, so if you want to upgrade a regiment of Knights, you can do so by giving them the Mark of Tzeentch, turning a bog-standard Undivided unit into pimped-out nerds with a blue force field. And Hellstriders, Skullcrushers, Doom Knights, and other Mark units have been added to the Warriors of Chaos roster as well, just like in their 8th edition army book. Let's talk about the lords themselves, and it's only fitting we begin with Archaon, because he's the Everchosen and the final boss of the Warhammer setting. For one, Dorgar is truly the steed of the apocalypse now, bigger than even the standard Chaos mount, and with a new set of animations that demonstrate his feral, demonic nature. That carries over to Archaon himself, who has an overhauled set of combat animations both on foot and on horseback, and though I haven't found any sync kills or choreographed duels for him yet, and they frankly might not even exist, it's a huge step up from what he was working with in the past. A lot more dynamic, a lot more vicious, and interesting to watch. There's also the lore of magic side of things. There's been a total visual rework for the lore of metal and the lore of death, which I will show off in its entirety in a comparison video going up soon after this one, and you'll be able to see all the differences for yourself between how they used to look and how they look now. But instead of pure lore of fire, Archaon has a triple mixed lore with 2 spells each from fire, death, and metal, making him more versatile overall, if perhaps losing a little bit on the damage side. His new spell kit is Searing Doom, Transmutation of Lead, Spirit Leech, Purple Sun of Xerius, a spell that unfortunately seems much worse in Game 3, both in terms of its damage output and the fact that you can no longer direct the initial course it takes. I do wish they would change that back. That was pretty nice in Warhammer 2 to finally realize, hey, I can actually control where vortexes go to an extent. And finally, he has Flaming Sword of Ruin and Burning Head as his 2 spells from the lore of fire. And all Chaos Lords have unique items and abilities, which we will show off a little bit later in this video. But I will admit, on the lore of magic side of things, there are some changes on the mixed lore front I don't really like Manfred losing his dual lores in custom battle, no longer has full access to lore of death and lore of vampires, He just has a mixed lore now that has pre-selected spells. But there's no question this change for Archaon is more fitting from a lore and tabletop perspective, and Searing Doom is going to do a lot for him in your early game campaign, I think. Which then leads us to the eternal debate that's been raging within this community for the better part of 5 years. Where should the mortal champions of Chaos like Sigvald, Valkia, Village, Festus, and Strikar go? Monogods or Warriors of Chaos? I've personally been arguing that they should go to the Monogods and not the Warriors of Chaos like in their army book, since I made my first Chaos God lore army and tactics video for Slaanesh back in like 2018. My basic logic being it's going to be exceptionally difficult to get a decent amount of lords for Khorne, Tzeentch, Slaanesh, and Nurgle to bring them up to the speed of Game 1 and Game 2 factions if we only give them demon lords. And these are not mono-demon factions, right? They're mono-gods, which means they combine all the mortals and all the demons for each god into single rosters. And while I stand by that argument, it looks like CA is setting things up so that it doesn't functionally matter at all. In custom battle and multiplayer, Sigvald can be played on both the Warriors of Chaos roster and the Slaanesh Mono God roster, meaning he can take a full demonette army if he so wishes, a mix of mortals and demons, or only mortals. And the same is true for his campaign as well, according to interviews with the developers over the last week or so. Be'lakor is being moved to the Warriors of Chaos and will not be under the wing of Demons of Chaos Undivided in campaign, presumably because Daniel's throwing a wrench in things on that front with his own unique mechanics, but Be'lakor will have the ability to recruit full demon armies anyway, and still has demonic mechanics. So it seems like no matter where these lords end up, they're still going to get the full flavor and variety of their god, and at the end of the day, that's really all that matters to me. We can continue that debate if we wish, but it sounds like Creative Assembly has the ability to give these upcoming champions the best of both worlds. So I'm not sure it even matters, or if it's a debate worth having at this point. And that's a good thing. So, let's take a look at some of the battle changes for each of the Warriors of Chaos Lords. Archaon, Sigvald, and Kholek each have some new toys to play with, and some casual reworks of older items as well. Archaon's Crown of Domination can now cause terror, in addition to conferring immune to psychology, and that should help him a lot in late game fights, where he would often have difficulties causing units to panic. And there's nothing more terrifying in the setting than the Everchosen himself. He represents the Chaos Gods. He should be terror incarnate. It makes sense that he can now cause terror now, and of course, he can keep his own Chosen from routing to terror, which is also nice with that ITP and an AoE. Slayer of Kings is the same old ridiculous steroid buff that turns him into a steroid-infused Shaggoth, essentially, but the armor of Morkar is new, or should I say, very, very old. It's the armor set of Morkar the Uniter, the first ever chosen in history, and will grant charge reflection and 24 melee defense in an AoE. Finally, you can take a look at his new spell selection, which has a nice mix of wave clear, support, debuffs, and single target damage. For Sigvald the Magnificent, Sliver Slash is his famous sword, giving him a powerful boost in combat and sundering armor, allowing him to scythe through demons and bypass physical resist. Stack that up with Mortal Blow, you'll be hitting like a truck in duels, while Paragon of Excess lowers enemy melee attack passively by 5 in a 35-meter radius. He will still be your go-to lord when you need a character who can't get sniped and just won't die, so against Wood Elves, he will still be your best bet as the Warriors of Chaos. And finally, we have Kholek Suneater, Herald of the Tempest. Lord of the Storm and Starcrusher are both the same, I believe, at least in custom battle and multiplayer, but his new ability, Tempest Rage, turns him into an absolute world beater, especially against enemy cav or large targets with high HP pools. Starcrusher and Lightning Summons for killing infantry formations quite quickly, massive bonus for Slurge for high value duels. He's going to be even more of a force in Game 3. And to that end, he has a fresh coat of paint as well. More lightning effects, better lighting, and a start position north of the Chaos Dwarf Empire, possibly the only threat to Grimgor Ironhide, in his new home north of the Great Skull Lands. That should be a very interesting start, especially once the Dawizar are added, hopefully by the end of the year. Now there is one final change I'd like to showcase before we end this video, and that is the rework to Aspiring Champions. Now, these guys have been weird for a super long time. They cost $525 and had Vanguard deployment for a while in Game 2, and they were pretty much useless in that game. They were never brought. I can't think of a single time I ever saw them in campaign or in multiplayer, or at least in a competitive standpoint anyway. They couldn't beat anything in melee. They didn't really have an identity. They were way too cheap for what they are. They're the closest thing to a Chaos Hero, essentially, besides Chaos Heroes themselves. They just didn't fit their lore or source material at all. They were just bad and weird, and I hated them forever. But they've been blessed by the Chaos Gods, souped up and ready to Hulk out on the battlefields of immortal empires. They now function more like monstrous infantry, though they're still considered small targets, and that they now have big-time wave clear and AoE attacks, way more HP, better stats, better leadership, and a heftier price tag at 1100 gold. They'll still perform best when mixed in with other units of infantry for protection, just like monstrous infantry do, but overall they perform much better, and they won't get exploded by a stiff fart or enemy chaff in melee anymore. I still don't expect them to be competitively viable. You probably won't see them very much in tournaments or in multiplayer at all. In campaign, not sure yet, jury's still out on that one, but either way, it's a much cooler and much better designed unit now, and I'm excited to see what they can do. I have tons of amazing battles already recorded. There is no limit to how many I can show, so be prepared for a storm of content over the next several weeks as we finally pit the races of the Old World and New World against demons from the Void and dragons from the Far East. Let me know if there's anything specific from a battle perspective you'd like to see, and I'll see you all in the next video. Indie Pride, signing out for now. Have a good one, guys.